Duperas y Duperas. Today on Dupe by the River, we're going to look back at the Union signing that the two of them in the same week. We're also going to look back at that thrashing that the Philadelphia Union put on Houston last Saturday. Oh, boy, oh, boy. We're also going to look ahead at this upcoming Saturday as the Union will be traveling in Cincinnati to face off against the Cincinnati Union. And don't you dare go anywhere because you do not want to miss this episode of Dupe by the River. Let's get it started, guys.
Dupe by the River
doesn't do anything well. There is not one.
I'm sorry. There was no creativity.
As a Union fan, I take that all day.
Another DP. We need to go get Mario Balotelli. And that is right. Welcome, everyone, to Dupe by the River, the show where we follow everything Philadelphia Union. Of course, we are brought to you by Philly Sports Network. Before we dive into today's episode real quick, we want to give a shout out to, we have Twitter and we have Twitter and YouTube here today. Welcome on in. Real quick, I want to give a big shout out to our Twitter account that has reached 700 followers. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for 700 followers. So make sure you guys follow if you haven't already. And let me introduce to you guys my experts in duping. The big reason we're gonna start off by the guy who's back here today. I'm so happy to see this man. He's a big reason why we have reached 700 followers here on Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, a loud applause for my man, Mr. Tim Lovinguth. Tim, hey, what's happening, baby?
Not much. It's been a minute. Well, more than a minute since I've been on here. Ever since I stopped coming on, the Union have this like really long win streak, and they've been playing good soccer, and it's not frustrating or at all or anything. So I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have come back on. But
wait, were you on the Chicago preview?
No, it was even before that. So
okay.
It might have been like back, Toronto when we lost to Toronto. It was a while, but I'm excited to be back and talk some first place Union and maybe Supporter Shield Union. I got my 2020 Supporter Shield shirt on. Like I'm feeling it. I don't know.
Those are the vibes today, Tim.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, Tim. You're definitely glowing, man. We're always happy to see you, especially our listeners happy to see you back here, my man. Timmy's back, ladies and gentlemen. And, of course, as always, join with me with another great tan. These guys are showing off with the tans here today. Please welcome Justin Pres McGlynn, Magic Society Friedberg. This is a good one here tonight. What's up, Justin? How you feeling, man?
Pretty damn good. That happens when your team just so happens to, be crushing it, have a plus 16 goal differential in the month of July, and just straight up crushing it. And the front three are on fire, and they're making signings, and it's it feels pretty good to be a Union fan. Which, if you had told me this when I was a high school junior going to the first game, I would not have believed you at all with how the team was going at that time.
We'll definitely get to all the nostalgia, but as they say here in Philly, you trust the process, man. That's why we got a good soccer team going.
Yeah, but he got fired for that, so you can only trust the process for so long. Listen, Nick sacrificed himself so that Ernst Tanner could flourish.
You sure it wasn't Ernie Stewart?
Listen, we sacrificed them one way or the other. There were sacrifices made.
Things just fell into place. It was always meant to be. It was foretold.
At some point we deserve good soccer too, Justin. Come on now.
Yeah,
now
but as Philly fans, we can't always be that positive. We always have to find some negative loophole.
I feel you, man. Let's get to the action, boys, because there's a lot to talk about. There has been two signings in the past week that we need to discuss. First one was something that was rumored last week, Richard Odada coming to Philadelphia. It was made official yesterday, 21 years old, Kenyan international, This is a kid with a little bit of a pedigree already at a young 21 years old. He had trial runs with Juventus and Inter Milan. He was going to be part of the Inter Milan's youth academy, but something fell through. He winds up with Red Star Belgrade. If you guys aren't familiar with Red Star, it's the cream of the crop of Serbian soccer. They're the best of the best. So he comes here, a lot of raw ability. He's tall. He's young. He's a workhorse. I think the question that a lot of the fan base have is, what is the plan for this kid? I think there's a little bit of a concern with what the midfield's going to be looking like from now until next year. So Tim, it's been a while since you've been back, man. What's your input, man? Like for the fans, wondering what is the point of the signing? What is the significance of signing? What would you tell them, man?
I mean, yeah, I've been kind of thinking of that myself, of like what could this mean? I mean, obviously, this is a player that Ernst values highly, and we looked all last offseason at what the Philadelphia Union want from a player and their Philadelphia Union value. They made a whole metrics thing off of it. So obviously, this guy checks a lot of boxes, and even from what Ernst Tanner said about him, he said that Richard is a holding midfielder with positional versatility. That was the first sentence out of the quote from Ernst Tanner. So it's another versatile midfielder. I mean, what it could mean is that it could just possibly be a depth piece that could help the Union make a run to MLS Cup, because that is the goal still this year. And they're in good shape to, I think, get there right now with 11 games left in the season. But what it could also mean, maybe it means that someone is leaving the club here in the summer transfer window. I mean, we haven't heard any rumblings of it, but the one player that always still sticks out to me is El Brujo. Jose Martinez, people are calling him the best 6 in MLS this year. And I don't know if I would say that, but he has been on another level this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's interest somewhere. And maybe if you bring this kid in who is versatile, and they say he's fast and he can cover a lot of ground, and all of this. And then you also have Leon Flock, who showed that he can play the 6 last game, and he played very well at that position. You have Jack McGlynn, rising star, coming in and changing the tactics up. Maybe now is the right time to maybe see a move for one of these Union players. I don't know, because we haven't heard anything. And when it comes to Union and transfers these days, it's like if you hear a rumor, usually something official comes the next day. So we'll kind of have to keep our eyes peeled for that. But I think off the top, since we haven't had any of those rumors, I would think it's just another depth piece and a one for the future kind of thing to look forward to.
Yeah, it really raises interesting questions, because I mean, you're stacked all throughout the midfield.
Yeah.
I mean, one name that we haven't even mentioned is Jesus Bueno as well, which a lot of people have question marks too. But Justin, anything to add on? Any feelings or towards the Odada signing here?
Yeah, I think Tim's on the right page. I think this absolutely indicates that either someone is leaving in the offseason or that they just want more competition. And, listen, I don't think any of these players necessarily would unseat El Brujo. I mean, if they think they're going to get, stuff for El Brujo in the offseason, I think, people thought there was going to be in this past offseason. I feel like if it's anything, it would probably be after this offseason, assuming a decent playoff run, and after the World Cup, when teams are probably going to be looking for signings. I don't think necessarily if it means a McGlynn transfer. I think with McGlynn, it all depends on. I mean, Ali's talked about playing another year. We don't know. We don't know how things are going to shake out. I think if anything, this does not bode well for Jesus Bueno. I think you were right on that front. And I don't think I had any high expectations for Bueno. It's just one of those things where, you look at it from the perspective of, yeah, he can play multiple positions in the midfield, and so can a lot of these players. And the one person that feels on the outside consistently is Jesus Bueno.
I know it's such a weird situation, because you get these players, right? You get a couple of these players who you just want to see what they can do with some consistent minutes. And I think one player we could put there is Matthias Davo. I just don't know, but I guess Jim saw something in practice that told him that he wasn't good enough. And so it just really is interesting. But I mean, even guys well, first off, hello, Mike. Good seeing you. Good seeing our friend Mike Thomas here. But even Mike Thomas has told us, Jesus looks solid with you too. So it's interesting why he doesn't get a little bit more play here with the senior team. But hey, it's Jim knows what he's doing, right? What's up, Tommy? It's good seeing Tommy in the building. Thank you so much for checking on here, Tommy. Tommy, I saw the Copa America final, and I want to give you a big shout out. You were the one that really got me going. And although I was upset over the result, I'm happy with the team. That was a very good result for women's side that never has had much success. So it was definitely a good night on Saturday for sure. But speaking of success, gentlemen, real quick before I get into the Houston, I was about to get ahead of myself, but we had a signing here today. This is actually a Bogue bomb. So when you hear a Tommy Bogart bomb, I mean, it's a legit thing. So according to Tom Bogart here, the Union made another signing. They have went out and signed an 18-year-old. Yeah, we got another youngster here. 18-year-old Abasa Aremeyaw. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it, guys. Now, if we have anyone that wants to correct us with the pronunciation, as always, we welcome that.
Yes, if we have any native African speakers who would absolutely love to help us phonetically pronounce this, please help us save us the potential embarrassment.
Well, you know what, Justin, to that point, I think it's a good thing if we can't pronounce the name, because the last players that we got that we couldn't pronounce turned out to be solid players. Casper Shabilko, Mikel Uwa. So, I think this is not a bad case, but comes from the Slovakian league, comes from MSK Zlina. So, I mean, to me, this seems like just a piece another one that they want to add on, see if they develop, turn into something. I did see someone actually, someone literally commented in Tom Bogart's comments, like, what does that mean for Brandon Craig? It's freaking out about Brandon. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Brandon Craig is going to be okay. But Justin, any thought on an 18-year-old signing here?
Yeah. So, like, the Bogue bombs are legit. He is the American Fabrizio. We don't have a here we go for Tom. At this point, I would love for Bogues to get his own little catchphrase. I don't know exactly what this means. I mean, from what all indications, there was a mutual termination of his contract, and I guess that kind of freed him up, and Ernst must have had him on his radar. And listen, 18 years old, big center back. From all we saw, like 4 games with the first team, like there's really nothing to go on. So I can't even bullshit my way and be like, he's gonna be great. He's athletics. Like there's literally almost no tape on him. There is not a lot to go on. I'm assuming he would start with U2 and see if he can push for minutes come next season.
Mike's got an interesting one. It feels like a little bit like the Abasa signing, young kid. We'll see where he is in a few years.
Yeah, Olivier definitely, like, how long was it? Did it feel like, do we still have him? Like, it was like, it just felt like he was buried. Remember, he was buried under Ray Gaddis for so long. You're just like, what does he have to do? And all of a sudden he gets it and just runs with it. And so, I think it could be one of the situations where Biden's been with us since 2018. Like, how long was he buried beneath Ray Gaddis? And it was
That's wild. I
forget
that myself.
Yeah, like eventually he found a way, and he just was patient. And I think it's people have this weird thought process that every signing from Ernst is gonna just immediately straight to the first team. Like they're gonna make an impact no matter what. It's like, a bunch of these signings do take time. Not everyone's a Carranza or an Uwa, or to this point, Gosling in a second season. Hell, Kai Wagner wasn't exactly, no one knew much about him, and it wasn't exactly expected to light up the league like he has. Like and that took patience. Kai, there were some struggles in his first season, and he has been able to make an absolute name for himself. And this is a signing where, who knows? Because listen, you have a great center back pairing of Glasnes and Elliott. You have Brandon Craig in the wings. You need depth. You need depth at center back, and some of the best talent in this league that have gone on, been sold internationally, have been developed through the MLS. I honestly think Walker Zimmerman probably should have gone on to Europe far long ago. Aaron Long should have gone to Europe, a number of years ago. There are so many center backs that have been developed in this league that it is crazy to see. And we haven't even talked about I think the wildest rumor that I heard, and there has not been much, at least news about it, but the John Brooks with the San Jose Earthquakes.
I know you guys like that one.
A pretty notable reporter who just also has to be a fan, but people in the know said whenever he tweets something, it's a trustworthy. I think that talk about trying to salvage the World Cup spot coming to San Jose, you must be desperate.
Nothing like coming to play with Jackson Ewell,
Yeah, Jackson Ewell ain't revitalizing anybody's career, let alone his own.
Tim, this signing does feel to me like, look, Ernst does not mind taking a flyer on some raw talent, like Richard Odada. So to me, it just feels like, center back position, although we are all high on for Brandon Craig, I mean, he's not the solidified future. He's still got work to do. He's definitely heading in the right direction, but it just seems like, what is the principle of this team? It's competition. This is a kid that could potentially push a guy like Brandon Craig.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll have to see, especially when it's an official one. I know it's a bogus bomb, but we haven't got the official word from the club yet.
We need that union admin first.
Yeah. But no, I think if this player comes in, we forget when Finley left. Like now, we only have 3 center backs. So if they're thinking he can be a 4th center back on the roster, I don't know if that's the case. I think I agree with Justin. He's probably more of a U2 type of player, unless he comes in and he really, wows everybody. But, you need a 4th center back at some point just to have back there somewhere. And I know you could play Cole Turner there, who's been with U2.
I was going to say.
You could play, any of the other U2 players probably could be a 4th center back because, knock on wood, we're not going to run through 3 very good center backs and have to rely on a 4th. But this kind of just shows like where Ernst's mind is, that he's probably thinking for the future. So
check out what Mike said here. Craig's stock may have actually risen to the point of sale for the Union already.
I mean,
I think that might be a bold statement. I think the only person legitimately in the homegrowns that his stock could have risen to the point of a sale without even as much minutes as Jack McGlynn.
Agreed.
100%. Yeah. Jack McGlynn is the most likely out of this, these homegrowns to be sold. I think Brandon Craig, I mean, he's moving well with you too, but I think potential alone. I mean, he could be sold. We could be way off base, but definitely does not feel like, at least to me, the point where he could be sold off now.
Yeah, but how often are European clubs going after under 20 MLS center backs? I mean, they're coming here for our midfielders and some of our forwards, maybe our fullbacks too. But I've yet to see like a center back that's like 20 years old getting sold to
I mean, the only one that I can think of MLS off the top of my head is...
Was he center back or was he fullback? I thought he was a fullback, but you could be right.
Isn't Chris Richards a center back? Am I getting that mixed up?
Yeah, Richards is a...
There you go. Well, there's one.
With Crystal Palace.
Yeah. Well,
unlikely Brandon Craig gets a lot more minutes with the Union. Most of his value will be driven through the youth national team. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are players like that. Who knows? I think it's
Mike with the confirmation.
It's early to tell.
It should be interesting, guys, and I love this. This is part of what we're trying to build from within, build from these youth, and you're taking chances on some of these young kids from outside the country. And Ernst has a keen eye for talent. It's not always going to hit. You will have your Matisse Orvex. You will have those duds here and there, but for the most part, he's been batting over 200, as I like to say. But gentlemen, let's get to this matchup here, because for the second time in what I think it was like a month, the Union absolutely demolishing another team. Houston, very similar to DC, in my opinion. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the Union, they came out and ready to play, lined up in the prototypical 4-4-2 diamond. The only difference is we'll get to the right fullback position, but Abasa got another start, ladies and gentlemen. No Brujo Martinez, as we knew, because of suspension. Leon Flock will start at the 6th. That means Jack McGlynn would get the start at the left shuttle. You still had Bedoya at the right, Gazek at the tip with Uwan Carranza up top. And it was a free-for-all. Like, quite literally, it was an honest free-for-all. Gazek got it started in the 23rd minute. followed by a Jack McGlynn free kick goal in the 42nd minute, up for MLS goal of the week. Mikel Ua with two back-to-back goals, one in the in the first minute of injury time in the first half. In the 48th minute, he adds on another one. Carranza in the 55th minute, and then Quinn Sullivan adds the cherry on top of this beatdown Sunday, as I like to call it. And Houston left shameless. It's funny because I did peep a little bit of the Mexican press, and they got word of what's been going on with Hector Herrera's club here in the United States. So they're killing them a little bit over there in Mexico, but. This to me was just a match that the Union continued to show that they're not this Red Bull high press style of soccer. They can possess the ball. They can attack with the ball. And gentlemen, the big three, Carranza, Ua, and Gazdag, they figured it out. Like they're clicking on all cylinders. And this was a really fun matchup. Tim, what was your biggest takeaway from last Saturday, man?
I mean, besides the goals, just like you just said, the team now, this Union team can decide how they want to play, and it's still Union brand soccer. It's still going to be like high intensity, but now they can decide how they want to play based on opponent. They don't have to go out and just do a press or a counter press and then balls over the top. If they want to play with possession like they did against Houston, you can, drop in a Jack McGlynn who will play on the left side. And then you can trust him and Bedoya to kind of work as like your quarterbacks and find the open man. And like, that's all they did against Houston. They sat in, they were they dropped a little bit deeper. And then the outside backs do what they do with the Union always. They always bomb down the field. So that was the first option. Then you had, Gazdag running in the middle, and then Ua off the shoulder and Carranza kind of in between, where he was either drawing center backs in or making another run off the shoulder. And we saw that it worked to perfection against a Houston team who had trouble tracking runners. And even Jim Curtin knew that before the game. If you saw the little video that the Union put out today of his pregame speech to the team, he was like, yeah, these guys can't track runners. So if we get in what he called the assist zone, which is like right outside the 6-yard box on either side of it, that they were going to get goals. And we saw that at least 2 times with how they scored. So it was a beautiful game. There were times where it looked like, I believe it was the 2019 Union team that would try to play like Barcelona every once in a while, where they would just ping balls back and forth, one-touch passing, a flare like you wouldn't like normally see in MLS. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting seeing how they do this going forward and what they choose to do and how they choose to play. It's always going to be high intensity, but I think now it's going to be dependent on opponent, which will make the game against Cincinnati interesting because we'll see how they do.
You can pass, or you can move the ball through the ground. You got Jack McGlynn with long balls. When Ed Brujo's in there, the side passing, like it's different ways that they can move the ball up and down the pitch, and it's been really fun to watch. Justin, man, what was your takeaway from Saturday night?
That the rest of the league should absolutely be terrified of this front three.
Even LAFC.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I said to Tim, I'm like, okay, you have Gazdag on 11, you have Ua and Carranza on 8. Name me a time ever that the Union have had more than one double-digit goal scorer. I'll save you the time. They've never had more than one. Like, the fact that you now have, and I easily think they will all have double-digit goals. Yeah. At this point, I think Gazdag could have at least 15. I think with Ua and Carranza, I'd say you have 11 games left.
Yeah.
I say you could probably get them both to probably in the middle of the 10 to 15 range, so 12 or 13, which would still be pretty, between 3 players. I think so far they are on pace to, break the record for most goal contributions from an attacking trade, which again, it is absolutely mind-blowing that, people were like, after, Daniel Gazdag's last, first season, it was like people were actually ready to no one really gave him the honest respect that he had. Like, it's not like, oh, well, it's either this season or bust. It's like if you looked at the last 2 months of the season and the playoffs, you saw what Daniel Gazdag could do. And, now, and I said this, with better strikers, it would be amazing what would happen. And the first game, as soon as I saw him and Carranza linking up, I instantly knew that this season was already going to be different. And he has taken a grip and he is on fire. I mean, this season he has just he finally has a striker that is willing to combine with him. He has a striker in Uwa who, Jim Curtin said himself that Mikel Uwa went to his office unprompted and said, "Hey, what can I do to get more touches?" And Jim said he appreciated that he did it on his own, that he wants to be involved and he doesn't just want to be the over-the-top guy. And Uwa had, I believe, 23, 24 touches in this game. He had a great, at this point, hockey assist on the first goal. He makes a great run on his first goal with that nice. I mean, he timed that run perfectly and just right foot, the foot just redirects it. And then on the other goal, he times his run perfectly. He, again, does what, and I love Sergio, but he does what no Union striker has done, is makes a direct run. Doesn't make a run to the corner, makes a direct run. He cuts across the line and times it perfectly. Ali looks up, sees him, plays a perfect ball, and runs onto it. Doesn't even take a touch outside of the right foot, and direct and in. Julian Carranza on his left foot turns and takes a beautiful touch. Like, it is genuinely amazing to see a front three. At this point, name me a better front three in the league. There is none. There is no attacking trio like this that is producing at this clip. And considering how dominant the Union's, defense is, I mean, like I said, a plus 16 goal differential, 18 goals scored, and only 2 given up. We know this defense is rock solid. That's never been in question. The question has always been where are the goals coming from. And not only do you have a front three that are dominant, you have the kids starting to chip in. You have Ali Bedoya putting in a hat trick of assists. This team is absolutely on fire right now, clicking at the right time in the middle, in this, the heat of the summer, the slog of the summer. They are clicking at the right time, and based on their schedule, I easily think, I mean, you're at 45 points right at the beginning of August. I think, honestly, this is the most points I think they've had to this point of the season, and there's no reason at this point they shouldn't be able to get at least 60.
Right.
So that's a really good point. Tim, I wanted to ask you because when I watch this team, and you heard Matt Doyle earlier in the year talk about the whole space eater concept with this team. This team, doesn't have that same high pressing type of style like that 2020 team. And shouts to Kevin Kincaid. I love the discussion of the 2020 roster versus 2022 roster, but it doesn't really feel like that. But it doesn't mean they're not as aggressive. I do see this team, even in the midfield, lose the ball, corralling whoever has the ball and trying to get the ball back and get on those counterattacks. But it does feel a little bit different now, the way they kind of harass attackers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that, just to bring up that point of the 2020 team versus this team here, the ethos is still the same. The team spirit is still the same. It's to go out and be more intense. Like, however you need to be more intense, you need to go out and be more intense. And that's sort of what we're seeing with this team. And yeah, they're, like, to Justin's point, I don't think they've had this many points at this point of the season before. I mean, you can maybe count the 2020 team, but that was a shortened schedule and COVID, and you're playing the same 5-6 teams. And that worked out. It helped the Union win a supporter shield. But I think it's why this team has a legitimate shout to actually win it this year. And just to go off on that little tangent real quick, it's because they're right now at this point with 11 games left or 12 games left for most of the other teams in the league, like LAFC. The Union, they have an easier schedule, and LAFC, it's sort of the only team that they're fighting with right now. NYCFC is there; they're still around, but the goal differential is going to screw them up right now. If they don't have Tati anymore, they can't score goals. We saw that 0-0 draw right after Tati left. Austin is still hanging around. The tough Sebastian Driussi is probably going to win MVP as much as I want it to be Gazdag, and I know Zach might show up on the podcast right now and kill me, but I think Driussi's going to win it.
No, I think it's his to lose.
Yeah, but I don't think Driussi's going to carry them, Austin to a supporter shield this year. I think they'll be a high seed in the playoffs, but so I think it's a 2-team race with 11/12 games left for LAFC. And when you look at the two teams, the Union know what they are, and they're not really in danger of losing anyone. I know I kind of talked about that at the top with some of these signings coming in. Maybe they lose someone, but it doesn't seem like there's been any rumors or anything like that. So LAFC, they have issues right now. Like Brian Rodriguez is going to leave. I think the reports were Brazil. I could be wrong. But I saw something along the lines like that. I mean, they don't really utilize him as much, but he's a DP. So that they're going to lose him. Like tonight, they're playing in the Leagues Cup showcase against Club America. So, they have to play tonight at a packed SoFi Stadium of Club America fans, which we know. And then they have to go to Salt Lake on the weekend. Like they're going to have these games trying to integrate, Chiellini, who's slow.
Which I will absolutely say, and I said this in our chat, I think the only thing that will hinder LAFC is the play of Chiellini. I mean, listen, a 37-year-old, as great as he is, how did he make the team of the week? I was watching the first half of that game against Seattle. Holy shit. He got torched by Jordan Morris and Alex Roldan. And I'm looking and I'm just like on the goal that was scored, it was an own goal. But I mean, Nicky Ladera was on the back post.
Yeah.
Chiellini gets turned, slow to react, doesn't have any pay, and people are like, "Oh, he had such a great game," and I'm like, "You cannot have been watching the same game." And and I've started to listen to several podcasts and who are a little more, let's be honest, a little more neutral on it. And the first thing I heard was people were like, how did Chiellini make team of the week? Like people that honestly are looking at this from an outside perspective going, he's slow as shit. Like that offense is going to carry them. Their defense necessarily wasn't an issue, but that offense, if they are going to keep playing Chiellini, that offense is going to need to be playing as it is. And I do not think that is even with all the superstars, I don't think it's a pace that they can keep up. I think every high scoring team has outside of what maybe Atlanta in their MLS Cup year, the high scoring teams eventually will hit a brick wall. I mean, at this point, like it's you have to have defense to advance, and if a better team will absolutely exploit some of those spaces. So. Yeah. At this point, all it takes is a quick slip up from LAFC, and if the Union can keep on this pace, they will absolutely be nipping at their heels.
Yeah, and LAFC has that one game in hand. I believe that comes later this month. I wrote about it.
Is it September? I know it's around.
NYCFC's is in September. I know that, but LAFC's, I believe, is later this month sometime. And just real quick, Justin, to your point about team of the week, we can't take that seriously anymore because Wayne Rooney was coach of the week. And
like the fact that I know the Union had 3 players and well deserved, but it was just like.
Jim Curtin was coach of the week. I mean, we're not going to lie.
Listen, the only reason that
tactics and had his pressing team play possession-based style with 2 deep-lying midfielders like that. anyways, DC is losing 3-0 to Charlotte right now on a Wednesday. So
take that, Wayne.
Come on.
Yeah, well, and listen, the only reason he did it because people were like, "Oh, it was such a great game." First time, like, it's because he dominated Orlando as a player, and they just wanted to keep the narrative. It's like that Orlando is saving their strength. They're putting all in. They're absolutely going all in on Open Cup. At this point, they just want to stay above the playoff line. They don't give a shit where they are right now.
Right.
Makes it interesting. Well, listen, this was a fun one, guys, and you're not going to thump every single team out there. And I would anticipate that our next matchup would be another thumper as well by the Union, but it's going to be a tough one, boys. And I think that the confidence these guys are rolling on 5 straight wins as well, something we haven't mentioned too. I think it's going to roll through. Now, next up, we got Cincinnati. We all remember what happened last time. So, as always, guys, we have you guys the expertise from the other side. So we're going to give you guys now the pre-recording interview that we had with Laurel Pfhaler, from the Queen City Press. She's going to give us all the insight that we need for this upcoming match against FC Cincinnati. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Laurel Pfhaler. Josie Dubetta is now joining us on the DOOP by the River guest line to help us preview this upcoming match against FC Cincinnati from the Queen City Press. Please welcome Laurel Pfhaler over here to help us preview the match. Laurel, how are you? Welcome to DOOP by the River. How you feeling?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Happy to come and talk with some. You guys are Philadelphia East. This is Philadelphia West, as it's been affectionately called since Chris Albright and Pat Noonan got here. So,
well, I definitely was going to ask you that. It's obviously something that we've kind of been joking around here in Philadelphia. We got the moniker of Cincinnati. We call them the Cincinnati Union. But for you as someone who covers this team, like, how do you feel about like all the influence from Philly over there? Sergio, Pat Noonan, Chris Albright, Harris. We'll talk about a little bit. Gaddis.
Yeah, we could joke a little about it because people really complained out of the last regime. It was all like Dutch connections. Everyone that came in seemed to have some kind of Dutch connection. So now it's just a Philadelphia connection, and it feels familiar. It's something different and something that obviously is working much better. So it's a welcome change, but yeah, it's kind of interesting to see just how many Philadelphia guys have come over here.
I'll be honest, it's hard to hate you guys because of some of the players that we fell in love with here in Philadelphia. I will say, I don't appreciate Chris Albright continuing to pick apart our team. Hey, I'm sure you remember the rumor of him going after Jim Curtin last offseason or end of last year, kind of. And so that's the only one. But hey, it's kind of cool seeing Sergio and Harris, some of those guys, getting another run in the MLS.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of guys that he helped bring to Philadelphia. Yeah. So it shouldn't be a surprise that he would want those same guys over in Cincinnati. So,
and obviously something has been working because you guys have definitely been turning around here, Laurel. I think before the season, I'd never depicted Cincinnati be in a playoff spot. I had asked someone asked me earlier this week, who do I predict being the Eastern Conference during the playoffs? And I'm like thinking to myself, like, Cincinnati is definitely right there when we're looking at it, big playoff picture wise. So last time we faced off, this is gonna be the second one. It was a 1-1 draw here in Philadelphia. We talked about it a little bit off the air. That was a game where it felt like Cincy kind of won that one. It was a good first half by the Union. Cincinnati turned it up in the second half and walked away with the point from Subaru Park. 1-6-1 since then. So even you guys are playing like the Union on the pitch as well, getting all these draws. So kind of, what's it been since that June 18th game? How's been the form of Cincinnati? How's it changed since that June 18th game?
Well, that game seemed to be a real turning point because, they got the draw there and then they won their next match. I'm trying to remember. I think that was the game at Minnesota, maybe. So they were looking better. And then all of a sudden, just the draws started piling up. I think they have 6 draws in the last 7 matches. And I think it would be 7 in the last 9, starting with that Philadelphia game coming out of the international break. So it seemed like it was going to, that was a good draw for them. Like you said, it seemed like they could have won that game, but going on the road and getting results, getting a point at Philadelphia, obviously a strong team. So that was a big moment for them. And then just lately some of the injuries, some of the depth is coming. Like you can see the areas of weakness a little bit more. You knew that was going to happen at some point because they just still don't have a lot of depth on that back line. So it's kind of catching up to them now. They're scoring goals. They're doing well offensively, and they just can't figure it out on defense. So it's a little concerning because they are among the leaders in points dropped in the league right now. So that's a lot of points that could end up coming back to hurt them later when that decision day comes in October.
I mean, like I said, Laurel, like we just went through it as well, and obviously here in Philly, there are bigger aspirations. I mean, people are thinking of MLS Cup here. So early in the summer, when the Union are having 9 straight draws, there was a little bit of a panic. But you really brought up a good point, and as I've seen this team kind of evolve throughout Jim Curtin's tenure here, the one thing Jim was always trying to implement in this team is depth and continuing that depth. This past week, we signed Richard Odada, a young kid from Serbia, and people are wondering what is his role be with, already got the 4 in your midfield, but that's part of what the Union mantra is, building that depth. You never have enough good players, right? So I think that's very important. And I think that for Noonan, I mean, I think this first year, you're always trying to implement that culture, but obviously things are working. That depth will definitely be coming down the line. Maybe a youth academy as well can help that too.
For sure.
So let's real quick. I want to talk about Miami. What an absolutely wild match. This is why we love the league, Laurel. It's these type of matches. But kind of tell us, the story of this game that happened, a 4-4 draw against Miami. Whew.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's been a few games like that for FC Cincinnati this year, and it's like you score 4 goals, you think you're going to win, but so Brandon Vasquez scored 2. They were trailing the whole game. Brenner scored to equalize in the first half. And then I'm trying to remember, I think both his goals were in the first half. And then, Miami, man, Higuain, I always say his name wrong.
No, it was actually perfect.
Those names I struggle with this. But he had a hat trick by halftime, and the penalty kick was his 3rd goal. So Tyler Black had ended up basically falling on, I can't remember who it was that he fell on a corner kick, and so it gave up a PK. But if you looked at the video, it did seem like he got pushed into that player. So Cincinnati fans did not appreciate that one, and then kind of settled down a little bit to start the second half. FC Cincinnati, they did give up another goal, but it was disallowed because it was offside. And then ended up going up 4-2, and Pat Noonan was like, sent a message to his defense, basically pulled 3 of the players from the back line out and made a swift change, and that kind of settled things down. But Brandon Vasquez ended up scoring 2 goals in the last 10 plus minutes. You think that they're going to get the win 4-3, but the set piece problems continued, and they ended up giving up another goal right at the very end of stoppage time. So disappointing for sure.
That definitely sounds like a gut wrencher there, but it's interesting you say that. The set piece woes is this has been a trend for Cincinnati over the past couple matches?
It's been, I mean, I wouldn't say the last couple of matches. It's been all season. I mean, I don't know what it is. I had it calculated after the Columbus Crew match. They gave up a penalty kick and another set piece goal, and I had the total then. I can't remember what it was, but it was pretty. They were well ahead of everybody else in terms of goals per game and up on pieces. And I don't know. They work on it all the time. You'd see it in practice. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think they do either.
That's very interesting you say that, Laurel, because this is a team in Philly that they thrive off those set pieces. They love the corner, the free kick, even the throw-ins. We hired a throw-in specialist over the offseason that's worked with clubs like Liverpool. It's made a huge difference so far. So I think that's going to be one I'm going to keep in mind while watching this game this upcoming weekend. So it's going to be an interesting one for sure. I wanted to ask you real quick, Laurel, about obviously Pat Noonan. When I watch this Cincinnati team, I see a different type of squad than what I saw in the first 2 iterations of this club. It's a team that kind of does have a little bit more of a fight, and it looks more fluid these days as well. What is this Pat Noonan influence on this club, you would say?
Oh, it's been huge. Just his experience in the league. And he really has connected with the players. You can see that the players really respect him. There's just a lot of communication. Just watching training, I mean, we didn't get to see, we mostly saw stretching in the past before he came, but he actually lets us come at the end of training. So we're seeing more of the team, 11 on 11 type stuff. And it just looks, like I said, I can't really compare it to the past regime, but in speaking with the players, they feel like there's more of a plan. Like they understand the plan a little bit more, and they're getting a lot more out of those training sessions. It's Pat Noonan and really his staff. I mean, it's a pretty interesting staff that he put together. A lot of experience with Dom Kinnear, Kenny Arena, and then Paul Rogers as goalkeeper coach. They've done it's been amazing to see kind of the chemistry, just the morale in the locker room. Obviously winning helps that, but I just think there was more belief in what they were doing because they knew he had experience in the league and they could see his plan. And then also just the way he's utilizing players. Like at the beginning of the year, it seemed like they wanted to go with a 4-4-2 diamond midfield, kind of what was done in Philadelphia. Yep. But first game, they lost 5-0 to Austin, and Pat Noonan was like, nope, this isn't going to work. So he was willing to adjust his plan. Also, FC Cincinnati has a lot of wingers on their roster that really don't need a 4-4-2. So it was going to be some of the, Alvaro Laurel he's been playing really well, but they've had to find ways to get him on the field, and that wasn't going to happen as well in a 4-4-2. So really just being flexible and willing to use guys in roles that, some of them obviously are a little different, but, Brenner is another example, playing up top with Brandon Vasquez, that we didn't see that last year under Jaap Stam, and it's worked out really well. They had 20 goals between them. So, I would say just his knowledge and being able to use guys in roles that'll benefit them, those players and the team.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We'll get to the Brenner issue, or the Brenner and Vasquez partnership in a little bit. It's definitely become very, very interesting to say the least. But the tactical flexibility is something interesting because here in Philly, we constantly keep seeing this 4-4-2 diamond. So it's interesting to see that Noonan was able to kind of switch it up. And the whole winger thing, like, listen, when we implemented this 4-4-2 diamond, we had guys on this roster like Fafa Pico, David Akam. We even allowed one of our homegrown kids, Jack DeVries, who was here as a winger. He wound up getting a trial run with Venezia, was on loan with Venezia. Now he's been permanently sold there. So getting rid of those wingers is definitely going to take some time for sure, but it's definitely never a bad problem as well. But let's get to the Vasquez and Brenner partnership, because before the season, a lot of people were looking at Brenner as, one of the quote unquote busts of the MLS, signed him to a ridiculous contract, really hasn't performed. But these two have really created a great partnership. Number one, I want to talk about Brandon Vasquez because obviously he got the nod for the All-Star game. What the hype around this kid? Like, I'm even hearing like USMNT call-ups. Like, talk a little about Brandon Vasquez and his brilliance. Yeah,
we started to see him really start to shine at the end of last year. He got a lot of opportunities off the bench last year under Jaap Stam, but he wasn't scoring goals. He just didn't look like he had it. So there was a big stretch where he just didn't do a lot for FC Cincinnati, but he wasn't being put in positions to be successful. Once Albright came in and changed it to make sure there were two forwards up top together, he started getting in games, and, Brenner kind of fell off at the end of last year, so didn't benefit him at the end of the year, but he had played, I think it was like 31 straight games before he got a 1-game rest. So, but Brandon started really stepping up at the end of the year. I can't remember how many goals it was that he scored. It was like 3 goals in 4 games at one point. And, but so we saw it kind of coming together. Like, he was just really benefiting from that partnership. And then, brought it into this year and started off really hot, had a couple of braces right away. And, 13 goals, 5 assists. It's been phenomenal, the turnaround that he's made.
Is it more like Cincinnati found a match that was made in heaven that they didn't know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Albright kind of knew that they weren't getting enough out of him. He has a good eye for talent, I think.
Yes.
He likes those domestic players. And, Vasquez just, he could see that once he had those opportunities and was put in a position where, also, I guess another part of it you would have to say is Luciano Acosta. He's getting forward more. In the past, he was getting sucked back deep into the midfield, trying to help on defense so much and they weren't putting him in positions to really be the creative playmaker he could. So that's really helped Brandon, just getting Lucho closer to the goal and feeding some of those passes. And then you've seen Brenner and Brandon just really connecting well as well now too. So it's just I think Brandon's just taking advantage of his opportunities, and he was tired of sitting on the bench. So
that is interesting.
Don't know.
We'll see how the Union can kind of combat that front line. They're the big three that we like our big three here, Gazette, Carranza, Nova, but you guys are definitely slowly building your own over there in Cincinnati. But I want to talk a little bit about the defense. So you guys have been allowing a lot of goals. I did hear some injuries, but what is it overall, the issue defensively with this team?
Well, there was a little concern going into the start of the season because they basically had the same center backs that they had last year, which the defense was not good last year either. So that was a concern. But, Chris Albright was kind of stuck with some of those contracts. And then, they drafted Ian Murphy to add some depth. And then it was a little surprising they ended up trading Gustavo Vallecilla to Colorado back in April. So people had seen him as maybe a good young piece that they could develop. And he ended up, getting a bunch of GAM for them. But, so, yeah. But, but Jeff Cameron, he was actually a really solid player. I thought he was their best addition last year. I mean, Acosta has proven to be the best, but just having him back, you didn't know what to expect because he had fractured his back. I think it might have been the Philadelphia game, the second one last year. I think it was that game. He fractured his back in a bunch of places, and I just don't think he's been the same player. So, he's also 37 now, so you kind of expected a little drop off maybe, but I just don't think he's physically where he was last year because of that back injury. But the other thing is Ronald Matarrita, their left back, was injured with Costa Rica in World Cup qualifying. So he's been out since, I think, March. So that's, they ended up bringing John Nelson from FC Dallas. They acquired him, I think, in the re-entry draft. He's been stepping in and doing well, but it's just those center backs. Tyler Blackett hasn't performed as they thought he could. And Nick Hagland's actually been the best center back on the roster this year, which is surprising because they signed him and he was supposed to just be this depth piece that they, could rotate in. And then he's ended up starting 6 more matches than any other center back on the roster.
One last question before we start getting to prediction time. I did see the news of Harris Medunian leaving the MLS. I think the reasons are very, very much valid. But I guess how much of a surprise was it for you guys over in Cincy with Harris, the Harris news this week?
Well, I was actually really surprised that he came back there. I'm not expecting that because when we spoke to him at the end of last year, he kept mentioning his son. I think his son's he might be 2 now, but it's his firstborn, and not being around him, he wanted to be closer to his kids. So I didn't think he would be back, but there had been a lot of talk about just his leadership role, and he wants to get into coaching, and there was a lot of he's been a big mentor for the young guys, and I think people expected him to maybe, if he came back, then it would be kind of a player coach, like transitioning into that kind of role. So I definitely then I wasn't expecting him to leave during the season, but now kind of understanding like he's really wanting to get back close to his kid. You know, I think there's some other just family situation stuff going on right now. So he wanted to get back. I don't know exactly. His wife from Israel. I don't know if that's where she or if they're in the Netherlands, but he's going to be signing with Pfhaler. So
okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we had something a little bit similar with Jamiro Montero, but obviously he just wound up staying in the MLS. But listen, I mean, family comes before anything else, so you definitely feel for that. I mean, at this point of his career, too. I mean, you know, he's just playing out of nostalgia. I feel like at this point. But no, I mean, you talked about, and that's the really key part about Laurel. Like you talk about how he's been able to shift the culture in Cincinnati. You literally did the same thing here in Philadelphia. You know, we just played Houston with Fafa Picault, and I think of him. I think of CJ Sapong. I think of Harris Medunian. And those type of dudes really help shape what we got right now and the culture that we have right now. So he's a really big key for that. And I like we just said, definitely see him coaching somewhere in some type of league. He can come back if he wants. We'll do a coaching job for him.
I think that was part of it. I think that Chris Albright did not want to see him go coach. I'm totally joking here, but like he wouldn't have wanted him to go to the Union. He wanted to keep him with him in Cincinnati if he was coming back. So
it's we just Kleberson, of Union fan favorite here, was part of the youth academy. He crossed enemy lines. He went to NYCFC as an academy coach and possibly maybe being part of the coaching staff later on there. But it should be interesting. But let's get to the predictions here. All right. So first, what I want to know is what will be the potential starting 11 for Cincinnati this upcoming weekend?
Okay. Well, let's see. They don't like when I share starting lineups, but I haven't seen enough from training to be revealing anything for sure. But I'm going to go with there has been a big question about goalkeeper because Roman Celentano has been in there since Alec Can got hurt in April. But, you know, it's been some time and, you know, they've been giving up a lot of goals. It's not Roman's fault, but people kind of wonder, are we going to see Alec Can back in goal? So I don't know that it's going to be this weekend, but there could be a change. I'm still going to say that Roman's in there just because he's been in there for quite some time now. So Roman in goal. So they've mostly been playing kind of a 3-5-2, or you could call it a 3-4. We'll call it a 3-5-2. But so I would say probably John Nelson will be on the left, like wing back role. I guess I'm going to say Ian Murphy, left center back. Jeff Cameron, I guess, in the center, and then Nick Hagland, right center back, and then Ray Gaddis and Alvis Powell at right back. That's tough because they keep switching back and forth. I think it's going to be Alvis Powell probably is the preferred player right now. And then defensive midfield, you would have Obina Nwobodo and Junior Moreno, and then Luciano Acosta and Branner and Vasquez up top.
Okay. All right. So the last part of this. So give us a score prediction. And since this is a Union podcast, Laurel, what is a key for the Union to beat FC Cincinnati?
I mean the secret's out there. You got to score on the set pieces. So I'm going to say 2-2 draw just because that's the safe bet with Cincinnati right now. And, you know, I guess Philadelphia has a lot of draws too. So I think they'll definitely be able to score a couple goals on the Union. I think, the Union will take advantage of those set piece opportunities and they'll end up in a 2-2 draw.
It's the Jedi Master versus the Padawan learner. Oh, I guess Pat Noonan, Jedi Master himself too. So it should be a lot of fun to watch this upcoming Saturday. Laurel, as we always ask, where will you be watching the match here? Will you be in the press box?
Yes, I'll be up in the press box. And now I'm thinking about it, man, I wonder if they will start Harris Medunian because they are. So his contract termination is effective after the game. I definitely think he'll get in. I don't know that they would start him just because he's not their best defensive midfielder.
Oh, we know. We know very well.
But I mean, he's actually done really well. When Obina, Nwobodo, or Junior Moreno have been hurt or suspended, Nwobodo ends up with a lot of yellow cards. I think he's one away from another red card or another suspension. Excuse me.
Sounds like a
but he actually has been solid when he has played.
Okay.
But I don't think he starts this game. But you'll see him on the field. They're going to give him his send off.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sure you guys will. Laurel, where can people who want to find out about FC Cincinnati, where can they find your good work?
So I'm at queencitypress.net. I couldn't get the .com. Someone's holding on to it. It's actually through a Patreon. You can also just search on there for it. But and then I'm on Twitter, just under my name. So Laurel Pfhaler. And then I have Facebook and Instagram accounts, but I'm not as active on there. So I answer DMs if anyone has any questions. So.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Laurel, we want to thank you, and best of luck as on Saturday.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Well, big shout out to Laurel. Thank you so much for coming and give us the expertise of Cincinnati. Tim, corners, couple free kicks, maybe a penalty kick, a couple of throw-ins, and we got this, right, Tim? Tim, you're muted. My bad, dude.
Man, I come back to the podcast. I can't even remember that I'm on mute. I think the set piece thing is interesting. It'll be interesting to see who's in there mainly to take the free kicks, because I feel like if the Union are going to score, it's going to be off a free kick rather than a corner. I don't know why, but it always just seems like the only thought on a corner for the Union still is a near post run by Bedoya for a flick on. Which, hey, if you get it right, it usually ends up in the net, but we've seen it doesn't usually go right for the Union for corners. But yeah, no, like she was saying, Cincinnati has the potential to score goals. I know the Union have the best defense in MLS, but Cincinnati's front three are actually only one goal behind the Union's front three in terms of goals scored on the season. And it doesn't seem like that, but Vasquez at 13, Brenner at 7, and Acosta at 6. That's one less than Ua, Carranza, and Gazdag. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually a pretty high-scoring game, a little, maybe 2-2, 3-3, or maybe a 4-3. Let's throw it out there, get a little crazy. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it's, Union get a shutout. Like that, it is what it is right now. Like that's their game. So, but if the game opens up the way that Cincinnati likes to play, and if the Union are trying to play maybe more of this possession style, then I could see Cincinnati having time to counter and to press that way, because they like to do that as well. So,
Justin, you can respond to Tim, but I want to know from you as well. This partnership with Brenner and Vasquez has been really, really interesting to watch. I mean, we've all killed the Brenner signing countless of times, but it seems like they found for him and it's working, Justin.
Listen, I think comparatively to his price tag, he's always going to be considered a flop. I think the fact that he's now scoring right around the time where he was being linked out, it was kind of ironic timing. I'm not really scared of Brenner. I think Vasquez is the threat. Lucho, we've seen enough of him in this league. You frustrate the hell out of him. You don't give him time and space. He starts to get frustrated. He starts to lash out. I think the Union did a pretty good job of that the last game. Vasquez, unfortunately, the one time you lose track of him, he just so happens to step aside and poke the ball in. So Brendan Vasquez has always been the concern this season. And Brenner, listen, is great. He's heating up, but he's not much. He's not. I'm not quaking in my boots just thinking about Brenner running down and I just say I think Jack Elliott or Jakob can handle Brenner pretty easily.
Well, Laurel also brought up Luciano Costa, which is a big part of their attack as well. we're going to possibly have Brujo Martinez back for this match, which obviously is really big. We know his ability to shut down number 10. So I think it's going to be a fun match, getting El Brujo going up against Luciano Costa, having Elliot and Glesnes going up against Vasquez and Brenner. I mean, dude, that goal that Vasquez scored in Philly, the draw on June 18th, I mean, that was a great heads up play. I mean, he paid for it a little bit after, right?
Yeah.
But that's just the brilliance of Vasquez. He just finds any way possible to get the goal. And seeing Alana kind of just upset over it all, it's great to see, man. It's absolutely
I mean, Brendan Vasquez, as I said in my preview article, which if you go to Philly Sports Network,
go check out right now.
You can check out my article. The one thing that I said, it was, I mean, listen, Brendan Vasquez in both games has been the player to watch out for. But the one thing I mentioned was, do not keep your eyes off of him in the box.
Yeah.
If you allow him to beat you near post, he's going to poke the ball in. If you allow him to, you need to keep a close eye on him, and you need to make sure that your spatial awareness is good. Listen, Brenner may attract a runner, but as long as you have a tight marking on Brendan Vasquez, again, the fact, yes, he has scored 13 goals in 22 games played, but there are moments, like I said, all it takes is one moment. It just, you cannot allow him to get any space whatsoever. That's the thing. It can be genuinely frustrating to see him do nothing for 80 minutes and then just poke one home. Like, that's the thing. He does not need much space. He only needs is a chance. It's, we talked about this like with Tati Castellanos. He could be doing nothing for 85 minutes and he'd score a goal. Like, you do not let up on a player like that. And that's why I think if El Brujo can shut down Lucho, which I easily think he can, and you limit Brendan Vasquez, you don't give him space, I think the Union can walk out of TQL Stadium with 3 points.
I think a big part of it is also going to be the starting 11, and that's going to be a big part of this as well. So let's look at some of these potential starting 11s. Tim, give us your starting 11, and Justin, let us know if you agree or disagree with Tim.
That's a good question here. I mean, obviously,
it's not the same thing every week anymore, Tim.
It's not. Obviously, we got Andre Blake in the back because that's always going to be the same, right? An impermanent marker. I think I'm going to go with the change at right back for this game. I would want Nathan Harriel in there just to deal with a little bit of they have any runners coming on the left side there. Obviously, the rest of the defense is going to be Glesnes, Elliott, and Wagner. As much as I want to see Flock at the 6 again, Brujo's going to come back in and he's going to start. And for me, in this game against Cincinnati, I think I would then move Flock to the left midfield position and have McGlynn be an off-the-bench guy. Then start Bedoya, Gazdag, Carranza, and Ua.
Okay. Justin, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with Tim's. I think that this may be the game where you see Nate come back in just because of his defensive one-on-one ability. Other than that, I see El Brujo coming in. Leon de Shuttler, Ali, Gazdag, Carranza. Like, I think the right back at this point is one of the only changes that you'll see.
It should be very interesting to see. All right, gentlemen, let's get to some predictions here. Justin, give us a final score prediction and just the key for the Union to get this dub, man. We want points here.
I don't think Cincinnati's going to score more than one goal. I mean, 2 goals. Like, I mean, listen, at this point, the last time the Union have given up, 2 goals was against LAFC.
Yeah,
going back. Over 2, almost 3 months. I just have a really hard time seeing them giving up more than one. I do think that Brendan Vasquez will be a handful. as he always is, but I think the Union defense is more than capable of keeping up to it. It's going to be tough, but I think the Union walk out of Cincinnati with a 2-1 victory, and I think the key for the Union is exploiting the spaces in behind the Cincinnati defense. That we've talked about the injuries that they've had with center backs.
Yeah,
they are struggling right now. They like I said, in their 8 games since since they played the Union, where there were 6 draws, 1 victory, and 1 loss. And in most of those games, they've given up at least 2 goals. So I think the Union, with the way they've been playing, they've that style of more, now waiting for the counterattack, being able to possess, feeling the game out, and really letting the game come to them is a change, but it's a change that has clearly paid dividends for this team. And I think with a team like Cincinnati, if you can get against them on that counter when you wait for that right moment, as we've seen, the Union just need a couple chances. I mean, we see that the 2-1 victory against Miami, 1-0 victory against Orlando, 2-1 against New England. It doesn't have to be the 6-0, 7-0, and it doesn't have to be those kind of blowout games. The Union know how to wait and counter, and I think being able to exploit those spaces with a defense that has been leaking goals, I think this is the right time for the Union to be walking into Cincinnati.
That's a good point. What about you, Tim? What is that?
Yeah, I know I was a little crazy earlier, throwing out different score, things. I wouldn't be surprised if it is high scoring, but I think more than likely the way that these two teams are stacking up right now, it would probably be a 3-1 win for the Union, I think, is what my actual score prediction would be. I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati finds a way to get more than one, if it makes it a little bit more interesting. But like we've been saying, you guys have been covering when I've been off the pod, this attack is clicking and the midfield is finding ways to get assists. And the outside backs who we haven't talked about are getting assists. Like Kai Wagner has 11 assists on the year. That's
high with Lujo Acosta for the league.
It's crazy. But yeah, no. I definitely think the Union are going to score goals. It just depends on whether or not the second best front three in MLS, which is Cincinnati's, is able to find a way to break down a very good and potentially historic Union defense. So yeah. I'm going 3-1.
Yeah, listen, I'm in for a high-scoring game, like a little shootout. Like we haven't had that this season, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look back at it. But
yeah,
one factor as well we haven't talked about was a factor in the June 18th matchup in Chester. It's Pat Noonan just knowing Jim Curtin very well because he was his assistant for a lengthy amount of a time. So I think that's going to be a big factor. And I think what it's going to come down to, gentlemen, it's going to come down to defense. You have two clubs that obviously know how to score a goal, but Cincinnati does struggle in that department a little bit, and I think that is what's going to be the difference. So it should be a lot of fun. TQL is obviously one of the better grounds that we have here in the United States as far as the MLS goes. So it's always dope seeing our boys over there as well. So hopefully we can play a little spoiler there as well as we have been in the past. But gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, this is going to do it for this episode of DOOP by the River. A big shout out to Laurel for hopping on in and give us her expertise for FC Cincinnati. Big thank you to both Justin and Tim for hopping on here today, giving us their expertise in duping. And a big thank you to you guys for listening on in today's episode. Of course, guys, you can find us wherever you stream podcasts. We're back on the DOOP by the River podcast site. So wherever you stream podcasts, you can find it on there. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe on here. We'll be back at it next week to give you the live viewing of DOOP by the River. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, that is Justin Perez, McGlynn Magic Society, Friedberg. That is Tim Lovinguth. Of course, I'm in Parcero, Philly, and we're telling you guys to DOOP on. Talk to you guys next week, and beat Cincinnati, baby.